All right, it should be live. And wow, how do I not see it on my own?
So you could be live right now.
Yeah, oh no, that's definitely happening. Um,
Hello.
hello everybody. I might have to actually, cuz I don't know how from this channel to go to like what are you currently streaming? Like to watch it, you know?
Yeah.
Um, you know what though? There's probably copy video URL and paste. Okay, that should be it.
Cool.
Did you get it?
All
This
right,
is
we're
great
good.
content. Um,
Okay.
all right, here we go. So welcome. This is it's been a little bit since I've done um, one of these because I've just been streaming with Leo, as we were just mentioning, and I've been wanting to do it with you two for a while. I've actually never talked to Sarah. Hi, Sarah.
No. Hello.
We were
You've
just
DM'd about my biceps before, though.
have I? Oh my god, that's so embarrassing. This is like lewd content. Okay, so I'm sure that anybody that's going to be watching one of my videos knows who you guys are. However, it's probably just a nice little etiquette to allow yourselves to introduce yourselves.
Okay. Well, we are the Strong Sistas. So I am Ashley,
Sarah.
and we kind of share about like two main topics, like our journey in search for optimal health, and then also our passion and love for regenerative agriculture. So we've got our Strong Sistas channel where we kind of talk about our journey towards discovering like pro-metabolic and ray peat, and then we have our Angel Acres farm. So we've started a regenerative farm here in Michigan from scratch as first generation female farmers and just learning as we're going. And that's our Angel Acres farm. And yeah, ultimately those two things are connected. I think that that's one of the issues in the current modern times is that people don't see how health and farming are connected, and we hope to one day be able to bridge that gap.
Nice.
Okay, don't say too much on that because that's a question.
Okay. All right.
No, that's fine. I've got plenty to talk about. Sarah, did you have anything to add to that?
We're sisters.
Yes.
That's about it. She covered it all. I think we're here to talk about farming more so than health. Otherwise, I would add to it.
We'll see where.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for the audience, this is going to be it's more about the farming thing because I just had questions, things on my mind. You know, I don't know. Actually, I do know some farmers, but I don't really know any, regenerative or whatever. I worked on a farm in high school. Actually, no, I helped a friend who lived on a farm in high school, and then in college one summer I worked on a farm.
Oh, cool. What did you do?
In high school, I helped my friend milk cows.
Very nice.
In a pretty big operation in like late October, early November, and it was super cold and everything was wet and dirty. It was, I really was wimpy about it. Like we had to hook up the things, and cows are like pooping in your face, and I just like 15 or whatever 16-year-old Kyle was not quite equipped.
Not having it.
Yeah, and then in college, I spent one summer working on a farm that was mostly cherry tomatoes and also some other like cucumbers, and I like picked cherry tomatoes and packed them into containers to go to mostly restaurants, I think.
Cool.
Pretty cool.
Huh. So you got both the animal and the plant agriculture experience.
Yeah.
A little bit.
A little bit, just a tiny little
Yeah.
bit, yeah.
Yeah.
So the first thing I wanted to ask was in your on your little bio thing on Instagram, there's letters after your names.
Oh.
And I think Ashley, you did a PhD in something?
Yes. So I've defended in September of last year.
Oh, okay. It's pretty
Um,
recent.
wait, was that last year?
No, it was
Wow,
2020.
2020. Okay, December 2020, and then or September 2020, and then you know how things go. Once you defend, you have to like wrap up all your papers, and so I finished all of like my publications and stuff like February 2021. So that's when I like finished up grad school. Um, I did a PhD in mechanical engineering, and in grad school is when I like kind of had some health complications, and that's when Sarah and I really started to dig into our health issues and try to take our matters into our own hands. And along that journey of discovering health and finding health, that's how we learned about regenerative agriculture. And in grad school, I just started to realize that like all of my free time I would spend learning about regenerative agriculture, wanting to go volunteer at the local farms. And when it came time to start like interviewing for jobs, I went to a job interview and came back just like not excited at all. And at that time, I really knew that like I fell in love with something else, and I really needed to follow and chase that passion. And I wasn't excited about the work that I was going to be able to do after graduate school. And so I think for me personally, from my grad school experience, sometimes it's more about like learning what you're actually passionate about. Like, how are you supposed to know at age 21 what you want to study for the rest of your life? And I think the grad school just opens the door to how to learn and how to discover what makes you excited. And so that was kind of my grad school experience. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I can kind of get with that a little bit from my experience, although I'm pretty much trapped in my situation now. No farm. And Sarah, you have letters after your name? I forget what they
there's
are.
just different things pertaining to like health and fitness that I did after college while I was kind of figuring out what I wanted to do, because I knew I really wasn't going to use my degree, which was health sciences, and then I was still waiting on Ashley to finish her degree. So we've lived together for like 7 years now, 5 years, something like that. Minus 6 years. And so I was just trying to figure out what I was going to do, learning more about my own health. And I've always loved fitness. And so being able to help people a little bit more, usually like it helps to get some certificates, but I realized over time that experience matters so much more, and it kind of applies for farming too. But this is one of those like fields where you kind of have to like jump in to get the experience. There's no like set in stone way to learn how to farm. And so that's what we're doing right now, is we're very much learning as we go.
But she has precision nutrition, integrative, what is the IIN?
Just integrative nutrition. So
Integrative
different
nutrition.
things that I've learned over time, but really I think you have to kind of go through your own health journey, and that like shapes your view on nutrition. So you can like learn all these different things, but it's really going to be your own experience that is the outcome of like what you preach or believe or live by. So yeah.
Okay. So do you do coaching and stuff right now?
We used to do coaching, but then we decided that we wanted to be able to serve people on a different like level, and that's where farming came into play. We didn't want to just like, I mean, there's so many really great coaches out there, and that's not to say that the industry is too saturated, but there's not enough young farmers out there. And so that's kind of where we decided to set ourselves apart and try to make a larger impact in an area that like isn't being highlighted, or there's not enough focus on it. So
I think
we do not coach anymore. No.
I think we did in the past and we enjoyed it. We just don't have the bandwidth to do that right now.
No.
With some of the projects that we have going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Samesies. I have people like message me, once in a while, like, oh, do you do coaching? And I'm like, not really. I just end up answering their questions for free. It's kind of like a stupid thing that I do.
You should just get like a Patreon and have like a little community.
There's a lot of things I should do. That could be a whole stream. I'm a super slow starter. At like when I decide to it takes me a long to like I'll be like, oh, I should get a Patreon, and then like 3 years later, I'll have it really up and going. Okay, so how do you, so like 100 years ago, maybe even more, there were a lot of farmers, and people would, it was kind of like it was part of the culture. It was like in some places people just grow up knowing how to start a business, like their parents imbibe like, oh, how to lease a building and all of those things, right? But that's like totally lost. Young people, like 99% of the young people in America have no idea about like if somebody was just like, you have to start a farm right now, they'd probably just Google like how to start a farm. So is there like not a super short but not a super long version of, or maybe the most interesting parts of that, like how does that actually work? How does one actually start a farm?
Okay, just one quick thing before we get into that question. Someone messaged us a while ago a quote from someone who is in Congress that said, "Why do we need farmers if we have grocery stores?" And so I think that really embodies the current state of how disconnected everyone is from how their food is raised, and because we're just used to it being in a package or just like so convenient and right there.
When I was a kid, my mom tells me that I thought, because my dad would get watermelon and cut it up, and I guess I didn't see him do it, and I thought watermelon came out of Tupperware when I was like 5. So I'm like that. So that's where that congressman is.
Yeah, I mean, you were 5. This guy like runs our country in ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, he's a late bloomer.
Okay.
So we got really into regenerative agriculture probably in like 2019. And we volunteered and visited as many local farms as possible. And so that was like our starting point, is just going, and there's this website called eatwild.com where you can like put in your location and then it will show some farms around you. And so we just did a ton of farm visits. Like one summer, I think we visited over like 20 farms.
Yeah, I mean, we were only eating meat, so we were like trying to source our food from a good place. And so that's kind of like, we always we don't make fun of, but we don't follow the carnivore diet anymore, but it really did lead us to farming, because we really did understand or start to understand the importance of animal proteins. And so, yeah, we visited farms to learn about how to farm, but that really doesn't like teach you how to start a farm on your own. I think that was your question. So I think we have a YouTube video titled like how to start a farm or something. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because like we did not know what we were talking about because we hadn't started a farm.
It's so stupid. Reflecting back on it, it's like these girls don't even have a farm, and they're right.
I'm like on a whiteboard. So don't watch that.
It's like a book report.
Yeah, so bad. But I think that for us personally, like there's resources like Savory Institute, and you can go through like their holistic management courses. But really, like you talking about Google, it's so true. You really do just like type into YouTube and you find people like Greg Judy or Gabe Brown who talk about farming and the challenges, and you kind of just like apply that to your region. And I mean, I think like if we're talking about like the first steps to take, it would be like definitely go volunteer first, because you're going to learn really quickly whether it's something you like to do. Like for you example, you didn't like milking the cows. You didn't like the teats. So it wouldn't work for you in that way, but maybe you like the tomatoes. So it would be good to go get that experience. Like for example, we want to have cows one day, but I think like where we're at right now with our land and our capabilities of just 2 females, it would be more difficult for us to have cattle than to have our sheep. So
yeah, those cattle are a handful.
They are. Yeah, but I want bison.
Yeah, she wants bison one day.
Oh my God. I just know from the cows, like they would do something like they would get spooked by a farm cat or something, like a barn cat, and back up and like bust like a steel fence by accident, or like fall down and like all these rock, like something that where you'd like break your leg, and they just like get up and brush it off. They're so like big, like they could just accidentally hurt you, you know, if you don't know.
Yes.
Especially bulls. Can be very dangerous. Yeah, but
Yeah. So that's the first thing. Is definitely go get the experience.
and then it comes down to where you are at in life financially
Mm-hmm.
and geographically. And honestly, like reflecting back, we were presented with an opportunity where we could get a mortgage on this place. However, like looking back, we probably should have just leased. So I think that that would be like the best starting point for someone is to lease farmland. So there are a lot of people who own land that do not do anything with it. They just own it to own it.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's definitely not enough resources out there that can connect people who want to farm, like who are like first generation. I have no land to inherit, but I want to farm. And then people who just want to own the land. And there needs to be like some bridge that connects those
There
two.
is a website.
What is it?
I'll send it to you so you can put it in the
Seeking
description.
farm
Oh.
arrangements.
It literally is like farm to land or something.
Farm match.
It's like kind of like farm match because I had put myself on there. You know,
She swipes left. She swipes left.
I didn't get any swipes back, so didn't work. But we were lucky, like she said, to find somewhere. But yeah, like Greg Judy, for example, if he watches videos, he's gonna tell you to lease some land 1st. And I think that would be smart because you're not like throwing all your shells into one bucket. Like
That's
we did.
one way to put it.
Yeah. So I was gonna say eggshells, but I don't know. So yeah, lease land. So get the experience, lease land, and start farming.
It's just it is important to also like when you don't inherit land, you are ultimately starting at like a disadvantaged spot because land in itself is just very expensive and buying all of the farm equipment and animals and things like that, like it requires significant startup costs. But if you take a step back and reflect, like so do all startups, right? Like you have to think of this as a business, like you're starting a business from scratch. And so the startup costs are kind of enormous.
Yeah. Well, it's you know, it's if you're doing a homestead, that's different. But
yeah,
same thing applies though. You don't want to like be financially irresponsible.
We started a GoFundMe, and that's how we were able to get off the ground. How we were able to buy the lamb and the chickens. How we were able to plant seeds onto our land. And so I think just volunteering and leasing until you're at a place where you can potentially invest. Getting that experience first to know if this is actually something that you want to do.
Yes, with the understanding that it's actually going to be harder. Which is what we learned.
Right. Yeah, it's not really. It doesn't seem like it's a business in the same way as somebody that's just doing a business as the best way to make money.
Yeah,
it's a little 100%. Bit more of a mix with passion project.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's if you are here to make a lot of money, farming is not the way that you should go. It's sad, but that is
by the way, is there have you looked much into, because I imagine maybe in decades, centuries past, there was more of a liaison between like government and farmers and all kinds of programs. And that's probably been de-emphasized quite a bit.
So we applied for 5 grants last year and we were awarded 0 out of 5.
Shut down.
So the government and like these agencies that award grants, they recognize that first year farms have a very low success rate and make it past 2 to 3 years. So they don't want to use their funds on new farms. And that's just it's a sad reality. But like, think of it in grad school, or not even grad school, like when you're a professor, when you're a new young professor, like your chances of getting a grant are so low. And so it's kind of the same thing. Like you have to have a track record and they really look at that. And so there are some good programs for like loans that the government does for like new farmers. And something that's interesting that's starting this year is the government's going to be putting out a lot of grants for like processing, I think, because local processing is a big problem. But yeah, we explored that option and we were ultimately denied. Maybe we'll have better success in like 2 to 3 years after we have a little bit of a track record.
Yeah.
This is like with somebody who like wrote like this is her thing, and we still failed.
It's
like because
okay.
grad school. So
Yeah,
ah,
it's okay.
Yeah. Well,
Sorry.
I'll have to do something about that when I, like acquire state power.
Yes, yes, please.
So real.
There is a program called NRCS, National Resource Conservation Service, and they do have some like small programs that can help farmers, and so that is one resource that we will be tapping into. But yeah.
Okay. So this is kind of a related question. And you said you decided to do it because you started getting really into it, and like, did you like when you were doing carnivore and stuff? Were you into the Joel Salatin thing? And
Joel
A little
Salatin
bit.
thing.
A little bit.
What, like the polyface? What do you mean?
yeah. 'Kay, he was really popular when I was big into the paleo world. Like
What do you mean into him?
like he was giving talks about how, like, the thing like, hey folks, this ain't normal, we should be farming.
Hey, so he has a great book called "Folks, This Ain't Normal."
Yeah, Sarah read that book.
I was encouraged to start canning. No, I honestly, like, while we were like preparing to move into our next stage of life, which was a farm, I was reading that book and I was really encouraged because I think like it does put an interesting perspective on like what we see as society right now and like what it used to be and how you maybe want to start like shifting your life back to what it used to be like.
Intentionally old-fashioned.
So I think that's like a great like homesteading thing, but it's not really applicable to starting a business and like trying to make money off of this. I think if anything, he would probably like discourage in a way. I don't think he would like say like farming makes money. I think in the past maybe, because I think he wrote a lot about, because his story is about he would sell eggs on the side of the road. But if we were to sell eggs on the side of the road, like people would laugh at us. So
That's
so yeah, I mean we did read his stuff and I think like he's done really awesome with polyface farms, but meh.
Okay.
so he wasn't a big influence.
No, I mean, sorry, I didn't mean meh in a bad way. I meant like he's awesome, like he's great.
I'm gonna say something, and I don't mean this in a negative way at all, but regenerative agriculture.
Yeah.
When you think of the word, who do you think of?
Well, I haven't really been in that world. Like, to me, you guys are that world.
Okay.
So
okay,
I
that's
think
good.
of you.
But I think that if someone that didn't know about us thought about regenerative agriculture, they would
Just agriculture in general.
No. Well, actually, yeah.
I think normal people would
start at
think
that
of
high level.
environmentalists, like people that are worried about environmental impact, which tend to be vegetarians, which tend to be this and that and the other thing.
Yeah. So in the regenerative ag space, all of the leaders who are good friends of ours, we have talked to all of them, but they are all old white men.
Oh, okay.
And that is, I think that is hard for some young people to relate to. It's hard to get young people interested in that because people want to be TikTok superstars. Like they relate more.
That's how you make money. It really is.
And then there's also there's not enough resources talking about how this type of farming is related to health. So like Joel Salatin can't really, like, he can briefly, but I don't think that he would be able to explain a lot of the health topics. I don't know. I haven't paid attention enough to that, but I don't.
You didn't read his book.
There's not enough like connection with how like human health and regenerative agriculture, how those are related. And so I don't even know where we were going with this, but that's kind of
he asked about Joel Salatin.
So
and it was part of the question of like why did you decide to do the farm thing, which you had kind of partially answered before.
Yeah.
Okay.
So our main reason why is because we both got sick, and I think mainstream only offers you so many solutions, but getting back to living on the land and growing your own food, I feel like that is a very holistic way to heal yourself, because you start living in tune with nature and animals, and you know what's going into your food, you know what's going on your land, and only then can you truly like start to feel better. And so that was our main encouragement to go farm. We wanted to start feeling better.
And then I also think like at least me, like I love educating. Like that is why I went to graduate school to begin with. I thought I wanted to be a professor. I was applying to do professor jobs, and then I realized that what I wanted to educate about, no one was going to pay me to do it. So I've got to do it by myself. And so that is a piece that we're really passionate about too, and why we share on social media. Even though social media has a number of downsides, it is incredibly powerful to be able to educate people at a larger scale. And so I think that was another piece of it as well is, hey, we want to pursue this because we see where the world is headed with food grown in a lab and all of this nonsense about animals destroying the environment, and how can we potentially play a role in helping educate others. And no one is going to pay attention to you unless you have animals. They're not.
Yeah, you look like we did.
We used to talk about it all the time, but like having the experience, I think, takes your people can trust you and understand a little bit better. And then also, like, there's that edutainment piece where people are like, oh, I'm also getting some entertainment out of this by watching animals, because you set up a tripod and film your animals every day.
Yeah, it is entertaining. So I want to get back to the environmental thing. That'll be like, so I was kind of thinking of this as like, these are the easy questions, so that we're going, this is like, this is like softball stuff. And then we can start to get into the more, tough topics like environmental issues. But before that, do you have any particularly interesting plans for the future with the farming thing? And I had this other question I wrote sideways here, which I feel like is a little bit related to the previous questions, which is, and you started to touch on it, which is how farming, connecting to like growing stuff has affected you. You mentioned your health, but like even, mentally or things like that.
Ooh. Okay.
The first one.
The first one is the fun plans.
Or so any plans.
I'm gonna touch on the mental side first. So we moved into this farmhouse October 2020, and this farmhouse is like 120 something years old. Nice. And little did we know it had a really bad mold problem. And the mold problem, like the biggest issue, was in her bedroom. So she was sleeping next to it each night. And so we went through this like horrible traumatic mold. Like it was incredibly traumatic.
Yeah, I saw a lot of it.
Move to the land, they said. You'll feel better, they said.
So ironic.
And Sarah and I kind of grew apart for a while. We didn't like talk that much. We lived in separate places, and there was just a lot of weird feelings going around everywhere. And me being here at the farm, like I can't describe it. It got me through everything. Like it just being outside made me feel okay. Like everything was going to be okay. And for once in my life, like I made a decision for myself. So I really think that I went to graduate school under peer pressure. I did mechanical engineering like under peer pressure, because like you'll get a good job, you'll get a good pay. But I made the decision to do farming because that's what I wanted to do, and that's what I was passionate about. I told my advisors, I am not continuing in this field, and I'm starting a farm. And that was like the hardest conversation I think I've ever had with anyone. And so to me, this farm, it's allowed me to explore like a new side of myself that I never really knew existed, because I have always been so attached to like succeeding and excelling and reaching that next stage in life and getting that next like degree or paper or things like that. And this is enough, if that makes sense. Like this is fulfilling. It satisfies me in ways that like no other like um, work that I've done has. So, yeah, that's the mental side for me. What about you?
I don't even remember what the question was. She said something about.
We'll get to the fun plans after. So.
What was the second question?
How has farming affected you? Like maybe how you, yeah, like how you see the world, or you were into health before and now you're doing this.
Okay, well, I mean, she kind of answered that, but I'll just kind of like. So she was describing how this house had mold in it and how we lived separately and everything. And she really kind of stayed on the farm. So while she slept somewhere else, she would drive here every day and work with the animals.
I literally spent like most of my year with chickens.
Yeah, she did. And I mean, I think it's very significant that she did a lot better than I did. I like really isolated myself. I took myself away from the farm. I didn't like being by the house because that's where I got sick. And so obviously I didn't want to come back and farm here. But she spent a lot more time outside. She spent a lot more time with the chickens, and she did not deal with as many health issues as I started to deal with. So I think there's something very significant about that. I only recently moved back in like 2 weeks ago, and I've like profoundly had so many positive changes just being around the animals again. And so I think that it really shows how therapeutic it can be and calming. And she was touching on like it's fulfilling just to be out there. Like it's enough. It is a different kind of work, especially if you go through academia or you go to college or whatever. You're always taught like you want to get like the best grade or succeed, or that's kind of how you judge yourself. But out there, like the animals are like who are judging you. Like you need to behave for them and do things right, and you have to show up. Like it's snowing, there's 3 feet of snow, but we have to put water out there. So I think like it's just a different perspective on life, and you recognize like the world is a lot bigger than just you and your next grade, or that's what we're taught to care about, but there's so much more out there that matters more. And so I think understanding that has put my health issues into perspective for me lately, because I'm like, man, like a chicken just got injured today, and I'm like over here complaining about this and that, but like that chicken's gonna die. So like I don't know, little things like that, it really helps to put things into perspective. I guess that's been the big change.
That's a great point, and I should have brought that up. I like reflecting back on most of my life, I think that I've been incredibly selfish, and there has been nothing that has made me more selfless than farming.
No, she's significantly changed. I will attest to that.
You can't like for
Really?
one, like you literally like have to put the needs of the animals above you every single day. And I want to have kids one day. I want to have a family. And if I didn't go through this farming journey, I would be scared for my kids. I would not have been a good mother. But I don't think there's anything that has prepared me better to be a mom someday than this farming experience.
Yeah, I mean, most people probably grew up watching animals reproduce in proximity to them, and they understood, kind of how people these days, of course, they don't see animals being raised. They don't see animals being killed.
Oh, yeah.
They don't see people. Very few people see people dying. All of those types of things are very kept away. And yeah, being on a farm, you can see like the realities of a lot of these things. I think that's really important mentally for people's development.
Yeah. Kids, especially, like to understand the life cycle and how that works, and appreciating their food because they raised it. I think that's really invaluable, and that's something we didn't have. So,
and then the other question was exciting things for the farm.
We'll keep this short. We sell our eggs. That's exciting.
So we have a small plot, 24 acres, and in the future we would love to expand and acquire acres that are around the farm, and like maybe like Sarah's family could have like some area, and then my family could have like some area. And recently Sarah has just been like, I'm gonna get bison. So one day we will have bison. Many years from now we have like a lot of things that we want to get done, but that will be a fun challenge. But I will say that there are so many acres around here of corn and soybeans that need the bison. They need the bison to heal the land. So I think that would be really fun. We'd love to be land flippers one day. That would be fun.
Oh, like you would buy a field that has been
Degraded.
degraded and then farm bison on it for a few years and then it could be farmed again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see. I see.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, so environmental stuff, because that's with the regenerative agriculture. That's basically the biggest thing. You're
Yep.
bringing the health thing into it, but it's mostly an environmental movement. And I remember that you've posted some things, like the misconceptions about the impact that animals have on the land and how in some types of land they're, good for it or necessary for the ecology and yada yada. Anything in particular that, let's see, because that seems like that's not the biggest part of your outreach, but it's maybe, what percentage would you say?
I think that like if it were up to us, that would be a huge part of our outreach. However, you're not going to reach a lot of people. So we're trying to be strategic. Like we're trying to put the health into it so
Mm-hmm.
therefore we can get more people to understand what you're talking about right now. Does that
People
make sense?
people care about their health more than anything
Yeah,
else.
I mean, you got like really gung ho environmentalist people, but they're gonna jump on like a vegan bandwagon first. So, you got to kind of like meet people where they're at and bring them over. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I remember you were talking about it's like carbon, and the whole the whole climate change thing, and I was like, hey, that's not real.
So I
We've
think
learned a lot. Okay,
so.
this last year has been big for us.
But even so, what? Okay, someone who is big in the regenerative ag space. His name is oh my god, Michigan State professor. What's his name?
Jason.
Dr. Jason Roundtree. He has
Oh,
some
that's a
excellent
really good name
research.
for a guy that got
Right.
into environmental studies.
Yeah. He's a really cool guy. He has some really awesome research on like cows and like climate.
Mm-hmm.
And something that he explains really well is the carbon cycle. And so I think a lot of people leave out that second word, which is cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what we have learned now is that the biggest problem that we all face is in a lot of these agricultural lands, our carbon cycle is broken. And I think a lot of people use the word carbon sequestration. We've used it a ton. So this idea that like we'll capture carbon out of the atmosphere and then it is like somehow indefinitely sequestered into the ground.
Mm-hmm.
That's not really like it's not really how it works, and that's not necessarily the best goal because you want to be able to use that carbon that you pull down so that way you can grow plants, it releases, and then you use it again. And so again, it's a cycle. Unfortunately, like a lot of industrial agriculture practices can break that cycle, meaning our soil isn't the best at sequestering carbon. And that does have consequences on how we grow food because for plants that don't sequester as much carbon, they can't necessarily feed the microbes in the soil as well. And so a lot of agriculture relies on these like synthetic chemicals to be able to grow food. So it's essentially like these are giant labs. It's just labs of dirt that we then spray chemicals on, the plant grows, rather than like a thriving ecosystem where the carbon is being cycled. So I think that that's kind of one of the biggest things that we've learned in the journey so far is it's more. So that's kind of the approach and the mindset that we take is we're building ecosystems where the carbon and the water cycles are working properly rather than having them broken. Like, for example, the water cycle is completely broken in a lot of fields because the less carbon we sequester, the less soil organic matter that's in the soil means the less water infiltration we have.
Mm-hmm.
And the less water infiltration we have, that means that those fields are more susceptible to drought and erosion. And so the erosion will then take the water and whatever chemicals are down the rivers and pollute oceans and things like that. So we're seeing that in like the Gulf of Mexico. That's like very obvious. If you follow all of the industrial agriculture in the Midwest and you follow the trail of the Mississippi River and then you look at the consequences at the Gulf of Mexico. So it's more improving that water cycle where the soil itself can be more resilient to dramatic weather in like situations. And I think, I don't know the exact quote, but it's something about like every 1% increase in soil organic matter, we can hold some 6 figures more liters of water in the soil. And so it's like pretty dramatic how much more water the soil can hold. And then that just makes the plants more robust and more resilient.
So you would say industrial agriculture and its consequences have been a disaster for the Gulf of Mexico?
I think so.
Okay. I want to.
Wait, would you disagree?
No. I was making a reference joke. It's a.
I missed it.
It's a Ted Kaczynski reference. It's the Industrial Revolution and its consequences have been a disaster for the human race. That's his.
Oh.
That's the Unabomber's book.
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's actually a really good book.
I mean, I am not going to say that I disagree with that, but
we agree with that on this channel.
that it's been a
disaster.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I would say it's a mitigated disaster. It's not an unmitigated disaster, and I think the only way out is through, so to speak.
That's
one thing I wanted to. So, the only reason I kind of bring up the climate change stuff is I feel like if you're in an environmental milieu and that's like this big monster that eats up, or it sucks the oxygen out of the room because you can't. Actually, it seems like it's been phasing out recently. When I was younger, like college age, climate change was the thing. It was the problem, like global warming. I mean, when I was younger, it was called global warming. And so, yeah, I don't know. Like, I guess you two aren't super interested. I got interested in that like 5 years ago and started like denying the climate, so to speak.
See, but I just think that it's so much. It's so much deeper than just carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Like that's just such like a blanket.
Well, they say it's a blanket.
That's just
actually
something that people can like easily grasp on and understand and then just like preach, right?
That's
like,
why I'm saying it's important to actually understand the issues with climate science, because it's all a lot of people want to talk about, and it's like this easily spreadable meme, whereas there are more important things like soil ecology and water drainage and all these sorts of things, and that climate change is just suffocating actual environmental discussions, in my opinion. So
100%. It's a distraction from how much we're poisoning and pollutinating. Is that a word?
That's good. Yeah.
Pollutinating the world. Yeah, that's my opinion. It's like, okay, we're allowed to now just grow millions or billions of acres of corn and soybeans and use incredible amounts of agrochemicals. Like, why is that okay? Like, what makes that okay versus having cows out on pasture? Like, it's just there's not much reasoning behind some people's argument for it. It's just a blanket statement that people can stand behind.
It is, but if you think that 97% of scientists or something say that the world's going to end or whatever in 20 years or whatever the time horizon is this time, and whatever the that stuff, the goalposts are very they get around, but so that's kind of my point, is when you have this perspective, I just feel like I just can't let it stand. It's like when people say sugar causes diabetes or something, and they might be advocating eating a better diet, that I would think is better, but I still think it's important to say, oh, you know, it's good to, I don't know, eat less processed food or something like that. That's fine. But don't do it for this reason, because when you start doing something for the wrong reason, or you focus on the wrong thing, you know, the next thing you know, they're eating like some wacky low carb snack that's full of crap because it doesn't have sugar in it, you know?
That's a great way to put it. No, but so the same kind of, you saying there's people saying that like the world's going to end in X number of years. That's a distraction from, we are literally eroding our soils at uncomfortable rates due to industrial agriculture practices. Like our topsoil, which is the most nutrient dense part of the soil where we grow 95% of our food, like we are uncomfortably eroding that. And if you look back in history and how all of these large civilizations decline and eventually like die out, they have absolutely eroded their soil. And so there's a lot of, what's his name? David Montgomery has a great book on this. And so if we are eroding our topsoil, and so we have a limited number of like harvests left. And after that, we will have to rely on lab-made food. And so again, if we think of the consequences of that, oh, that means that all like rural communities, small farms will go out of business because we're not growing food outside anymore. The profits will be in the hands of these large corporations who have control of these labs. And then what are we eating in the labs? Like, what are we growing? And so again, I think it's like people need to talk about the actual problems. Like it really does go back to health, because the way that food is grown and raised, like really does impact how like the health of humans. So that's kind of, that's another reason why we don't want to focus as much on the climate on our channel and what we talk about, because if you look at the really big problems, like the really pressing problems, like we are I think we're destroying human health with how we're creating food.
Yeah, we're making better food.
Right. Yeah. Maybe I'll make a video about climate change at some point, and just because it was like an old passion of mine. Because even when I started doing biochemistry, I started learning about, you know, optics and optical density and spectrometry and stuff. And then I started to understand how the CO2 supposedly absorbs energy and radiates it, et cetera. And it's just like a bunch of crap. But
well, and like if you actually look at like the industries, like agriculture is such a small amount of it's just a giant, like cows are just a big distraction of big corporations being allowed to just pollutinize. What did I say?
Pollutinize.
Yeah, like pollinate, but
pollinate.
For polluting.
For pollutants.
Yeah. So it's just like, what is carbon dioxide in the atmosphere isn't a pollutant. That's the thing.
Right.
Like, and so it's a distraction from other things that are happening, and these other large corporations are allowed to do these other things.
Yeah. It's very, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Agreed. And okay, so that is sort of, I think we're getting into. So now we're going to get into the real good philosophical territory here, because that brings up a lot of questions. And I'll start the section with, I've been seeing this. I see this once in a while, where you might see a video online of maybe a car pulls over, and you know how if somebody's hunting, sometimes they'll park like next to some woods, and like a guy in camo will be getting ready to go hunt in some rural neighborhood community, and another car will stop, and there'll be like a young girl or something, and like her dad, and like, oh, you're a bad hunter. And have you ever seen videos like that where people are usually young girls are hate hunters when, like, if they're not raised in a family that hunts.
This is an actual commercial?
No. Like TikTok or it's like social media videos.
Oh, they're literally pulling, is real life.
Correct. Yeah. So it's like a virtue signal, like you're a bad, I guess, there's probably a lot of conflation with hunters and like Republicans and Trump supporters that really like mimetically.
Okay. They're wearing camo.
Yeah, maybe they even have a red hat. I mean, who knows?
Okay.
So, at any rate, what I find interesting about that is I can understand, though disagree, when a vegetarian denigrates a hunter, but meat eaters do it often. I mean, have you seen this? Have you people that eat meat will say
Do this to hunters.
hunting is, oh, that's wrong, or you're a, I don't know, like a sick, like you like to hurt animals, or.
So, okay, we don't hunt because like
Wait.
Boring.
What's the question?
No, he's saying, have you seen, like, expand on it? Have you seen this trend, this phenomenon?
Yeah,
Is that what you're
we're
saying?
building up to something, but yeah.
Okay.
So you haven't really seen
Can I
that, or?
I have not seen this. I don't have a TikTok like you, apparently. I do not.
Really? Because I would think you girls would have.
We'll get to TikTok someday.
I will never get to TikTok. I have not seen that, but I do understand, because we were carnivores before, so we kind of met a lot of people who hunted for their own food.
Yeah.
And I do recall them having to defend themselves a lot.
Yeah.
And I think that, it's for a meat eater to do that too, is just like, I think that's a large disconnect from what's like how their food's actually being produced and what's happening. And I love my mom, but I see this with a lot of people too, where she'll yell at us like, "You're gonna kill those lamb? Oh my God, I can't watch." But like, she's eating
conventional meat,
like chicken or something, like,
which is often slaughtered more less humanely, I should say.
Yes, exactly. And
it has a less humane life.
100%. 100%. Don't even get
chicken and pork agriculture is so much worse than beef agriculture.
Yeah, and so I think it actually goes back to this disconnect, your watermelon in a Tupperware phenomenon, not knowing where it's coming from and what's happening, and like what it could look like and what it's supposed to look like the difference between that. So when it comes to hunting, I mean, I think that person's actually being like the most resourceful. That animal is living its normal everyday life, enjoying it, and like it has one bad moment, and they're obtaining that food, and they're not having to rely on a system. So while I don't hunt because like I would probably kill somebody.
Oh, I've done it one time and it's just like not fun. Yeah, she would.
I think
she'd kill herself.
She'll hunt the most dangerous game.
Like if you think there's something wrong with hunting, then you need to like really reassess like where you're getting your own food and what's actually happening.
There's also like a really important purpose of hunting. Like the government,
especially for deer,
yeah, like if we don't, like, do you guys want to live in a world where hunting isn't allowed? I don't think so. And then it's also like really important for like controlling livestock on farms. Like as an example, we have a friend who has a farm down in Georgia, and they have a wild hog problem. So these male hogs come in and mate these female pigs, and then they have babies that they can't sell because it's like these are wild hogs. And so it's like,
and I'd buy some wild hog babies.
Yeah, right. But it's also like there's certain things like that it's kind of
do your build up. Where are we going?
Yeah, where are we going?
So that was the one vignette, and then we kind of get at the, I guess you could call hypocrisy, right? For a meat eater of all people, a factory farm meat eater to be berating a hunter. It's just so silly. And there's these other things. And now this is a good type of video. I've seen some videos like this, like on YouTube, but a really bucolic farm scene, much like your farm. But often they seem kind of like they're in Germany or Switzerland or something. And like maybe a pretty young girl with an accordion, and the animals all come up to listen to it. Have you ever seen anything like that?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So you're with me? So, when I first saw something like that, or even before, I used to, because, people like to pull over like kids, you're going on a road trip and it's like, oh, look, cows, daddy, let's like, but then these people eat cows. And I was like, there's a darkness there, where you're like befriending these animals but we're all eating them. And then I thought, what is wrong with that? Actually, what's wrong with being nice to having some type of relationship with animals that you eat? Like who said that that's wrong, and why is that wrong? There's even an old video game I played, StarCraft 2, where you interact with alien races from other, solar systems. And one of them is like two races that share a planet, and like one's a carnivore and the other's an herbivore, and the herbivore is food for the carnivore, but they're both like spacefaring. This is, weird thing. And so what I'm building up to is what I think's going on here. Okay. Is, so you two have taken into your hands the power and the responsibility of raising food, and sometimes you will have to kill animals, as part of that process, and you're controlling what they do as well. You have power over them, and you're exerting human power over them, the same way as a hunter is, the same way, and you're also a steward for the land, but you are is sort of exerting this will to power. And so all of these things that we were just talking about, the climate change and like humans using things that put, carbon dioxide into the air, humans exerting, acquiring animals for food and killing them and raising them and all of this stuff. It's basically humans using power in the world towards their ends. And I feel like that's the ultimate philosophical, that being wrong, that itself, as like a sin, is kind of the idea behind like, oh, I hate hunting. Oh, why do we have to have meat? Let's just all eat plants. Like, let's remove ourselves from the guilt of this situation, from using our power in the world to like, oh, there was a forest here and now there's a human habitation with like farms and some forest, and oh, that's wrong. It was better before there were humans, or, because of course animals kill each other. So ultimately a person who's a vegetarian or anti-hunter, anti-animal farmer isn't really against animals dying, because, animals, unless they're like somehow anti-predator, which would just become, it would just kind of, devolve into a ridiculous position. They're against the exertion of human will as like the stewards of the planet. And it's funny because that kind of a thing, it splits people, because what you're doing is a pro-environment lifestyle. You're doing it for a bunch of different reasons. One of them is because you want to educate and like improve, improve the soil and inspire and teach other people to do the same thing. But this philosophical rift would come between you and some of your natural audience, which would be people that would kind of maybe feel like, oh, there's something wrong with killing animals. Whereas, so having, having delivered that exegesis on the will to power in farming and hunting, how does that make you feel? And any thoughts?
So, in order for one thing to live, something else has to die. And until someone accepts that, they're never going to like the idea of agriculture, animal agriculture. And to think that everything can live and everything can thrive, it's just factually incorrect. And you just have to get to a point of understanding that. I, growing up, didn't have that realization. Honestly, didn't have that realization until we visited a farm, and the farmer that we visited said that these animals here at the farm, I know what they do every single day, and I give them the best life that they could ever have. They're not out in the wild scared about predators. Instead, they're like, I move them around with fencing, and they're safe here, and then they have one bad day. And I don't think that I realized like how humans live, how humans are able to continue to thrive, how we're able to progress. And it does require, like you said, establishing some power. And people will always disagree as to what is okay, like how far can one go. And I think that that's kind of where like the vegan and the pro meat eaters will always disagree on. I don't think that you're ever going to change like a diehard vegan's opinion on this. But I think we used to be plant-based and vegan because we thought that that was best for like the environment and just being good people. But we're taking our lamb to the processor in 8 days.
Mm.
We have given them the best lives possible. I love those animals. Like but that doesn't mean that we can't celebrate their life, honor their life, honor the service
Is
that
that
they've
something
done
that you
here at
had
the
to
farm.
come to some type of emotional terms with?
Oh, 100%, 100%.
Yeah, I feel like it's still something where like that's going to be our first big thing. It's not going to be easy for us.
I am mentally prepared.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they're going to be there and then they're not there. But I think what she was saying about like celebration, it's so true. It's like it would be more of a sin and a waste to just like this animal's going to die eventually and we're just going to let those nutrients go to waste. Whereas we could actually utilize them and like bring them back to life in a way. I think that's so much more like holistic and resourceful than just like let's have that animal live at a like shelter and let's let it live out its life and then we're gonna put it somewhere. Like
yeah, kind of hide the reality of death.
Yeah,
and sort of wash ourselves of the blood by being bloodless. Yeah,
exactly.
Yes, and that I feel like this is like a challenge. I think we're up against a civilizational challenge here because
well, can I say something?
Yes.
We really like the reason being I think that we're getting to this point is because we've become so disconnected. And so there isn't that understanding of like the life cycle and kids aren't raising their own food. And so that's another reason why we wanted to move to a farm because like I want my kids to understand that from the day they're born, like how things are supposed to be, how things work.
That's a good point.
And the reason we're up against all this is because we've moved away from this lifestyle and we rely on the watermelon in a Tupperware. Like
we're all in this like unicorn land where like everyone can live. And it's
that's actually the most selfish place to be is oh, I'm too good. You know, it's kind of like an aristocrat that never has to make their hands dirty, you know, because they have the wealth to pay somebody else to do it, but they're still getting goods and services that require somebody's hands to be dirty, you know?
Exactly. And I think that's something that a lot of vegans or vegetarians or anti-meat people miss is that like more animals are killed for industrial plant agriculture than responsibly raised regenerative agriculture because the plowing of fields absolutely obliterates the small species on that land. So birds, it's causing massive extinction in bird species. And then what scale of life is socially acceptable to be wrong to kill? Because if we're talking about microbes and insects in the soil, if those aren't considered life, like why aren't those considered life but a cow is? Is it because you can see it? Industrial agriculture is like pesticide use is destroying all these small creatures in the soil at rates that you can't comprehend because you can't see it day to day. And so I think a lot of people miss what gets killed with industrial agriculture because they don't see the blood. Right. And so it's just a disconnect on how life works.
And it's disrespectful. It's you know, we're all here because of a lot of very difficult things that our ancestors did, not limited to farming and killing animals, but all sorts of very difficult things that probably very few of us could do. And we sit atop this, you know, system or whatever. And yeah, it's very easy to look down and say, oh, you know, that's uncouth. Did you see, to continue on that, there were a couple weeks ago, I was sort of making fun of a vegan on Instagram. His name was James Aspie, which is a funny name. He, somebody sent me something. Some people send me things all the time, like, hey, will you attack this person in their comment section? Essentially. And he's just one of these vegans, and he's kind of like a vegan bodybuilder. Like he has a picture of, you know, where he's like flexing, but his it's whatever. Like vegans have a lot of challenges with.
I did see this on your story.
Building a physique.
Where are you going with this?
I did.
I see him now. Okay.
So I went back and forth with him, and he refers to animal agriculture as like an animal holocaust.
Is this one? Holocaust?
Correct. Yeah. And I said, animals kill animals, and he was like, well, they're not. That doesn't mean we have to. And they have all these kind of weird things that are basically sitting atop this religious feeling like it's wrong for humans to exert their will on the world. And I feel like something that he's missing, because they'll say, oh, do you know how many millions of animals are killed every year for human food? And it's like probably the same amount that wouldn't have existed in the first place.
Yeah.
Like the exact same number. Because like there's like, like if you breed chickens or goats or whatever animals that you're eventually going to have some type of like sustainable production of, those animals wouldn't have ever come into existence in the first place. So it's kind of weird to call that. It's a lot different than like walking down the street and there's a guy and you kill him, because like you didn't raise the guy.
Right. Right.
And it's also just so what I'm saying is ultimately at the heart of these people, like these James Aspie types, and he has like like 1 million followers or so, 500,000 or something.
Half a million or something. Yeah.
They sort of kind of think that killing animals for food is like killing a person. In fact, they probably think it's worse. I think a lot of them profoundly hate people. And so anyway, I just want to highlight as much as I can that I'm interested in your project and particularly the ethos behind it, because it's very pro-human and it's looking at a problem, and like basically there's two ways, right? It's like, let's say somebody gave you one of those the horrific videos of factory farming,
PETA video.
I just saw one on his page.
Yeah, they're horrific. I mean, no question. And there's kind of two ways to deal with that emotion, which is, I just want to divorce myself from like the entire circle of life. And actually the responsibility, it's kind of like, if you just sit in your room all day and like play video games and don't like talk to people and don't go out, like you could never hurt somebody by accident. You know what I mean? Like if you actually don't engage in the world and you don't pursue any kind of your own will, you kind of keep this like sinless veneer, but you're kind of just taking up space at that point. Or you could, do something like what you're doing, which is, okay, so I don't like this thing. Like I don't like the way animals are raised. I don't like what it's doing in the environment. So I'm going to try to do something different. And the difference in like nobility between those two things is like this enormous gulf, where one is passive and the other's active. And so, for example, like you're doing this thing where you're going to take this animal that you've raised, that you have feelings for, and you're going to take it you're taking a lamb to the slaughter, literally.
In a U-Haul.
Right. And that it requires more emotional maturity than just being like, oh, hands off, I'm not going to deal with this issue. I'm going to like pretend like we can live in a world where things don't die, like kind of being like a perpetual child. And that seems to be where we're reverting to.
Things don't die.
Yeah.
Keep on.
Well, no, I wanted to get your thoughts on those ideas.
No, I think that what you just said is kind of summarizes it all. Is just this pretending, or it's never having the tough conversations and developing the emotional maturity and understanding about how the world works and how life works.
Yeah. I mean, you said we're pro people, but I would say that we're like very much pro animal. Like we love our animals.
Oh my God, yeah.
And I think that we expect those lamb, we got them knowing they're going to die. But like, for example, we have egg layers who are like our ladies.
Yeah.
They're not there to die. They're there to produce eggs. Eventually everybody dies. But I think it's those unexpected like you just start to realize like how beautiful life is, but then how cruel life can be, but it just has to be that way. Like for example, I said that one of our hens got hurt today. We weren't expecting that.
No.
But like you have to deal with it. And so there's like these highs and lows, and I think that we're having to mature as we go, because like Ashley texted me like, Sarah, I'm gonna cry, like the hen, she's down. And I'm like, I'm crying in the car, Ash.
What
Like,
happened to her?
Oh, we're not gonna go there.
Okay.
Well, that's
There's an accident.
fine.
Is she gonna be okay?
We'll see.
Okay.
We've had.
But like the fact that she says we'll see, I think that's the tough call that should have been made. We should have put her to sleep already, because that is the more humane thing to do.
Yeah.
And
Is that what you would choose to do?
So a few weeks
Is that what
ago,
we choose to do?
Like,
yeah,
I think
kill
that
her
is the
that way?
responsible
Like,
thing to do.
are you gonna
Yeah.
use the meat?
We made stew, rooster stew. I mean, so the point being, yes, we would eventually use the meat. They're great stewing hens. But the point being is like, you have to make that decision, and like, yeah, we could bring that hen to, and we've made this mistake before as first generation farmers.
Yep.
Saving an animal
Yeah.
that got injured because you were attached to it.
Yep.
But then you have to think about the animal's life.
Yep.
So like you have to make those hard decisions. Like you should put the animal out of its misery. I don't know. I'm just saying, like, we're learning as we go. We're developing that maturity because we weren't raised this way, and I think that's what the problem is. Is like nobody is anymore.
We've had this conversation recently. Princess Leia. I don't know if you follow our account enough to know who Princess Leia is. Princess Leia, I was very attached to this chicken. She was like the outcast of the chicken flock, and so she very much like came onto me, like always around me, would jump on me because all the other chickens would peck on her. One of our dogs got out, Gus, and of course he went straight for her, and she was paralyzed on the spot. At the time, I did not have the emotional maturity and the understanding of like, this is like, you have to put the animal's life above yours. And so we decided to do everything we could to save this chicken. We made a YouTube video, I did, talking about like what we're doing to save her. But Sarah and I have reflected back, like, was that in the best interest of that animal? Should we have put her down at the spot? Or she's still alive today and doing so much better, but she may never be able to walk normally again. And is that fair to a chicken? Can the chicken practice all of its instincts and live a normal life? And so that was last fall, and we've kind of evolved a little bit on our mindset since then. And a few weeks ago, so our chicken coop is like this giant greenhouse style structure. And when it's not snowing outside, we move it around because that's like, we're taking care of the soil and the environment. And I didn't stake it down one day, and we had really strong winds, like 50-mile-per-hour winds, and it shifted the coop. And 3 of the chickens got stuck underneath the coop when it shifted. And so their legs like broke instantly. And at that time, I finally realized that I was like, I have to put these chickens down. It's not fair to them. And so it's like understanding, one, quality of life for the animals. It's like, do you want to be a vegetable person and not have feelings or be able to like perceive what's happening around you and just laying in a bed and like just disintegrating and not living at all? And so kind of having that awareness of what the animal is experiencing. I don't think we had that early on.
I don't think anybody does. But I think that brings up interesting points too. Like our dog's natural instinct was to kill the chicken.
Yeah.
So bringing back to what you said before, like if we just had chickens everywhere because we didn't interact with animals, we let them be, they would be getting killed left and right. Like, it's just the reality. And so there's a wrong way to do it and there's a right way to do it. And so what we're trying to do is do it right. Because like I think you agree, like none of us are for factory farming. It's horrible. However, the people who are against eating and raising animals, I don't think they understand there's another way. So that's kind of what we're trying to educate on.
But I also don't think that they understand that, like, for something to live, something else has to die. Like
yeah, but maybe they also have never seen that like they can live humanely. I don't know.
And I guess the statement of for someone to live, something else has to die. The scale of that thing that has to die, I think that varies from group to group. So like vegans and vegetarians are okay with like insects and microbes in the soil dying, but they're not okay with larger cows and chickens dying. And so it's just it's a perspective. And I can respect some like our mom.
No, I think we literally all think the same. I think we don't like the factory farming.
Right.
But I think that what we were missing too when we were vegan is we didn't understand that there was like another way.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, that's a good point.
So
yeah, like we are in no
need
way.
to, unfortunately though, like when we go to these like anti-eating animals vegan mindsets though, we're missing that, and we're like further incentivizing this, which like does nothing for getting back to like doing things right. So we're kind of like going down this horrible path of like, let's make our own lab made food. So
Yeah.
it's just
Right.
tough.
I would even push back a little bit about like doing like the idea that at all it's wrong to I think that factory farming is bad because not because it's kind of anti-animal, I guess you could say, but it's kind of I think it's more anti-human in the sense like the people that work at places like that, they would probably we would be better off if we had a larger farming sector and a larger processing sector that was not set up that way, because some person who is having to do the work in those types of factory farm settings themselves is kind of like, killing their soul.
Yeah.
It's just it's a job that basically shouldn't exist.
Yeah.
And so it's not just bad for the animals, it's kind of bad, and it's bad for everybody in the sense like people don't want to talk about it, and it's bad to have something in your society that everybody knows is kind of bad and you don't talk about it.
Yeah.
That kind of, let's just not deal with this, and then it becomes, it can get really worse because nobody's looking at it. But yeah, I mean, humans eat animals, and they always have, and we are very, we are born, we're not born clean of that, because our ancestors ate them, and it was, to try to like, go through this like quasi-religious cleansing. It's kind of, I mean, just these people, like I said, if you want to do something in the world, like if you're a farmer and you're growing vegetables and you're like, I'm gonna, like, I can kind of respect that. But somebody that's just sitting on the internet and saying, oh, you're like holocausting chickens and cows and stuff because you eat meat, like that's not serious. That's not a serious critique of anything.
Right. Right.
So how much, we didn't really schedule an end time. It's been about an hour and a half.
It's like my bedtime pretty soon,
okay.
But it's okay.
I'm gonna check the comments real quick to see if there's anything like we could. There's probably not a lot of questions, but somebody said in Canada, big anti-meat consumption propaganda by media.
Yeah, there is a huge thing going, and I think it just makes it worse for the small farmer. It really does.
Yeah, he said at the end how to fight back. So how would you fight back against that messaging?
Oh yeah, well I think if you can't farm yourself, which like it's unrealistic for a lot of people, I think it's good to just kind of be aware of where the farms are by you, and if you can financially, it is cheaper to usually go out to the farm because you're directly supporting that farmer. So if you could just like, so say in like your entire diet, you've got your milk, eggs, meat. If you could just like move one thing towards supporting a farmer, that's helping.
No, they're asking how can you like.
Yeah, how can you push back? Because there's no way you're going to win against the vegans. So you just have to do your own little part in supporting the other.
I thought the person was asking.
You should not go and like like it's such a big like that guy you sent us to, like over 200K followers. Like he doesn't care what I say about him, So it's like pick your battles.
So this circles back to you asking about Joel Salatin. Joel Salatin believes that the government, like we're never going to get help from them. They're never going to understand how things should be done. So don't waste your time on that, and instead like vote with your dollar.
Yeah.
And so I think that the Joel Salatin approach would just be like, just do whatever you can. And no one's going to be perfect. We're not perfect. We do not buy everything regeneratively. We do not buy everything organic. Organic has its downfalls too. But it's just doing what you can to source your food as locally as you can and finding those farmers. I thought his question was like, how do you have these conversations with like anti-meat eaters? But I would say in terms of the messaging, there is just an uncomfortable amount of venture capital going towards lab-made food. It is billions on billions of dollars being thrown in this industry, and it's kind of scary where things could be in 5 years from now. And so that's why like voting with our dollar as consumers is just vital.
Yeah, I definitely think that's something people should do, even if it's just both for the reason of making a difference and because it's just good to buy quality products. So it's good all the way around. I do think, though, I used to be more of a libertarian and aligned with the Joel Salatin idea, but I do think we're going to have to, there's going to have to be some state power acquisition because ultimately the government can do. Now, my prediction, a lot of people are like, oh, they're going to make us eat bug and live in the pod or whatever. That's not really what can happen. But what can happen is that every year policies can be enacted or allowed to happen that make meat a little more expensive for the average person and incentivizes and destigmatizes the fake meat and just squeeze it a little bit more year to year. And then before you know it, in 20 years, a significant amount of people are eating like weird, cloned whatever slop.
That is a great point, and something that I think if one reflects back on the Green Revolution, so this was right after World War II, where these government policies started to provide funds using tax dollars, provide funds to farms who grow certain crops. And so this is an example of you saying policies can have huge impacts over time. If we reflect back on where we've come from after the Green Revolution, we've not only like eroded our topsoil because these industrial agriculture practices that are being funded by the government. It's also all of those products. Now we have an abundance of all this corn and soy. And so people are like, crap, like I got to find a way to do something with this. And so they create crappy food. And so it all comes full circle. So you are right in that like government policies can have huge implications. And about 2 years ago, I honestly thought that my 10 to 15 year projection was going to be in science policy because that was something that I was really into in graduate school. And I initially got into regenerative agriculture after learning about the Green Revolution. And I was like, whoa, we can't let that happen again. And so I do think that we are going to have some brave souls enter into the policy sphere. I had a conversation on my YouTube channel, or like it was just me at the time. You were in Illinois. I had a conversation with someone who is trying to do this. They are getting donations from like millionaire billionaires who care about the environment, and I forgot the name. Whatever. This organization is playing the game and it's lobbying because if we don't lobby, we're gonna lose, right? Like lobbying is what's allowing Monsanto and Bayer to kind of take over the agrochemical field. I forgot his name, but he is collecting donations to be able to lobby because it's just you've got to play their game. And so hopefully more things like that come around. Otherwise, it could be pretty challenging to be able to afford meat, and not only as a consumer afford meat, it could be just like financial suicide, which for farmers to continue to grow food. And so the more policies that are placed can put barriers for small farms, and the more barriers we put for small farms, the more that the meat gets centralized into these meat corporations. Like right now, 85 to 90% of the meat that's bought in the United States goes through 4 meat packers. So that is like millions of small farms throughout the US raise the cattle. but they have to sell their cattle to feedlots and these large meat processing corporations because they just can't afford to do other options. Like it's their only option.
Mm-hmm.
And so these large meat corporations now have control over the cost of meat, how it's cut up, how it's sold, whether it's sold. And so we saw that with the pandemic. We saw how unstable these centralized food conglomerates are. And so policy does need to change. It does.
Yes. Another prediction of mine. Unfortunately, I think that will happen, but I think that Americans will probably have to go through some privations that have not been experienced in our lifetimes vis-a-vis like resources to realize that something like the centralization of this or that or the other thing, to kind of have those types of perspectives, because as long as people can go to the store and more or less get what they need, they won't be super motivated. You'll just have like that 5% of people that's maybe interested in the environment abstractly. You won't have a critical mass to be like, hey, actually maybe farming, like food security, should be an important policy of the, it should be considered like kind of national defense in a way, and that it shouldn't really be possible for a hiccup here and there to like cut off food or things like that, and that farming, and hopefully people can conceptually understand that the existence of farming is itself like a pillar of I guess civilization. I mean, it seems kind of obvious when you just think about it, but all these people, like you've said, that grew up with the Tupperware food and this, that, and the other thing. It's hard to realize that, because stores do seem to produce food in the stores somehow.
Click a button and it appears.
Somebody said greetings from Florida. I was hoping to get everyone's thoughts on the history of knowledge acquisition in science as well as other fields, and our comfort with ceding knowledge to authority. Ooh, that's a pretty abstract question.
Yeah, because who wrote the book, or how do you know the source that you're reading from is knowledgeable or is correct?
Right. So it requires a discerning consumer.
Are they talking about just like knowledge in general?
I think so. Yeah. I think they're talking a little bit, perhaps another way to put it would be a Ray Peat type anti-authoritarianism in information sharing in like humanity as a whole, perhaps.
Yeah. Well, I think that's something that a lot of the younger generation has kind of lost, is like the ability to question and have conversations, and instead it's just sometimes just goes straight to acceptance of like that's right and that's wrong, rather than having almost the ability to be able to question. And maybe that's, I don't know, do you see what I'm saying there?
Yeah,
like it's just, there's no questioning of what is known, like no questioning of science, no questioning of what is accepted.
Some science. What's interesting is that what is science is like, for example, it may become difficult to teach the reality of sex differences between men and women in a biology class at some time in our country. Even though I feel like there's a lot of evidence that there's, sex differences in our species. Yeah. And there's not a lot of evidence of something like climate change or some other modern mainstream scientific narratives, but those you would get in trouble for not teaching. So, and who's making that decision? I think, I will come down on the side. I'm actually pro-authority. I guess you could say I'm an authoritarian, but I am not a totalitarian. So I do think authority is a legitimate concept, and that we have a hierarchy. People do learn things with experience and with study. But yes, there should be a venue for questioning people. And obviously people that go to great lengths to not be questioned. And of course, there's always a human element, like what's a reasonable question? Like if somebody's just heckling, then that's not the same thing as like somebody asking a question from the heart, that has like a sincere criticism of a scientific point or a government policy or something. There's clearly a difference there in sincerity. And if somebody's blocking sincere questioning or labeling it as insincere, which we've seen so much in the past couple of years, then I think that's a pretty big red flag that we've moved from like an authority to a totalitarian.
There needs to be order. There needs to be some order, but I think a good example, like one of my good friends, her dad works for a textbook company in the state of Texas.
Oh, interesting.
And he kind of works with the publishers, because something that like we forget because we're just like so removed from like elementary school times is like textbooks need to be updated every like couple of years, right?
Do they?
And so I guess it's a big business. He has told me that like certain districts and towns like don't allow certain parts of history to be allowed in textbooks. And so I think that that's just an example of just like it's such a strange world right now.
Did you see I think in California, they were like, it had something to do with math, where they were making it so there's no wrong answer. And it's like, that's no longer math. That's just like...
It's new math.
It's new math. It's making everybody equal. We're normalizing things.
Yeah.
And I think...
So it goes back to like, where are you getting your source from? And is that source good?
Source.
And there are
came to me in a dream.
It's not like there's not there are good sources. It's just it's tough. The internet has complicated knowledge acquisition.
It's
improved it, but it's also complicated it.
Yeah, well, the internet, it's human, all too human. There is a bit of a I think we have a vegetarian in the chat.
Oh, very interesting.
We have a wild mammal biomass has declined by 85% since the rise of human civilizations. This was mainly driven by overhunting and habitat loss.
Wait, can you say the beginning again?
Wild. Oh, so that's the secret sauce, is the word wild. Wild mammal biomass has declined by 85%. In other words, since humans came about and created civilization, so to speak, only 15% of the wild mammals, the biomass, it persists from that time to now. In other words, we either wiped out species, decreased their numbers, and we've replaced them with our food species that are not wild biomass, but are just mammal biomass.
Yeah. I mean, I think like Ashley and I, we walk by fields sometimes and we're like, man, that'd look good if there was some bison just out there roaming. I think we're like in agreement. I think that's what we're trying to recreate is like the most evolutionary consistent, or at least like how the animal's supposed to, I hate that word, how the animals are supposed to be out on land. So I don't know what the argument is there. Like,
okay.
Are we
humans are bad and meat eating's bad? But they say
we can't go back. And
the same person said, I think they have a solution here. Nature's fund, FYND, fungi protein can feed the world, requiring fraction of energy and land. No need for animal livestock. Okay, so this is a Soylent Green enjoyer.
Okay. So the world is messed up. like Sarah said, like we can't take steps backwards. Yeah. And like you said earlier, the only way is through. Food security. In order to have enough food to feed the world, we need soil, top soil.
Top shelf.
95% of the food that we consume relies on topsoil. So one of the principles of regenerative agriculture, hold on. So how did we get that topsoil? Where did that topsoil come from? It didn't just like poof magically. Bison, large herds of bison that were probably a lot bigger. I agree with this person. Probably a lot bigger than current bison. Massive herds of bison moved through the plains And it was this like huge animal impact at one period of time. So much manure, so much urine that is so rich of microbes concentrated, and then they moved on to the next area, and that field rested. That's how we grew topsoil. So with regenerative agriculture, we want to emulate those bison herds by using the tools that we have. I can't go buy a lamb that is 85% bigger than the lamb that I have access to. We are using the tools that we have to regrow topsoil so that we can have food security in the future. We are trying to emulate what these natural animals did in the wild. This person should check out the work of Alan Savory. They would really align with his. He is pro meat, he is pro animal agriculture, but he is doing it in a way to try to bring us back to where we were by building ecosystems. Because like Sarah said, when we build these ecosystems, then animals can practice their natural instincts. We can have proper functioning water and nutrient cycles. He was saying fungi protein.
I feel like if we were just like isolate that, we're becoming less and less human.
If we don't, we see this is a thing. Ruminants built the topsoil that we all rely on food. Industrial agriculture has degraded it and is slowly obliterating it. We need ruminants to regrow it. That is just like, that has to happen. We do. And because we have suburbs, so we can't expect herds of elk to come and grow our soil for us. Like, that's just, you can't do that in this day and age.
He's saying that human, like, we have already gone so far past that we now need to rely on the fungi thing.
Yeah, and just let the bison kind of multiply and go wild.
We're past them. We're onto the fungi.
Yeah.
But I don't believe that we can just focus in on that one area and like what else is good, like what would happen to everything else, you know?
But in order for the fungi to survive,
that's what I'm saying.
We need healthy topsoil.
Yeah.
And in order to have
who knows what
topsoil,
kind of wacky fat growing stuff they have. I mean, yeah. I'm not interested in it, but who knows?
No, I know, but like I just feel like it brings us back to the beginning. We're trying to like go back to how things are like holistically supposed to be and like be with the land. But that I think we need to go forward.
So we've gone through this mistake of
yes, but I meant like
we need to go forward and bring with us with a discerning eye and with an aim that's true and with a heart of gold. We need to pull the good things from the past and make them new again. We can't go back. Okay, because if we go back, we'll just do the same thing again, right?
We need to, say it with me, make soil sexy again.
I have a question. So I do want to let you guys go soon because it's Sarah's bedtime. But there are some actual questions. Does hydroponics fit into regenerative agriculture, and do you have any experience with it?
Okay, we don't have any experience with hydroponics. That is a very touchy subject. My thoughts on hydroponics is it can potentially be used in areas that do not have soil anywhere near. Mm-hmm. So like in like the middle of New York or something like that. However, we should not go to hydroponics because that will destroy our food security. Hydroponics aren't growing topsoil. You're producing food in some enclosure. You're not building ecosystems and you're not growing topsoil. And so that's my thoughts there. Like, does it have uses? Sure. But it should not take over agriculture.
So regenerative implies soil.
Regenerative implies going through, like you just said, using tools that we had in the back. Bison roaming the lands and rebuilding topsoil. We don't have big, huge bison anymore. Let's use lamb, cows, whatever we have at our disposal to emulate.
Use some bison,
Yeah, some bison. Sarah can have her bison. Use those principles that we know built our topsoil. Do it in today's context through domestication, yes, but do it in a way that's well managed to produce more topsoil to then have food security in the future.
Somebody asks, what color are your chicken egg yolks and what kind of feed have you experimented with your livestock?
Our chicken egg yolks, I was actually talking to a customer about this the other day. Sometimes they're not like poppin' orange. And I think that like we've been greenwashed in the, like all of really everything in groceries, but in particular with eggs, people are like really gung-ho about the brown eggs and the really orange yolks. However, you can just add beta carotene to the chicken feed and output a really orange yolk. So it doesn't really
Right,
necessarily,
right.
yeah. So our eggs are our yolks are like bright yellow.
Depends on the season.
Yeah, they get some orange.
Yeah, sometimes eggs are, yeah, that's the one thing that people don't understand is that, yeah, you could, when in a world where like they buy food from all over the world, the seasonal aspect of this stuff is
Yeah.
divorced from it. So yeah, it's because grass doesn't always have the same carotenoids.
No, and you'll experience like meat tasting different and milk tasting different based on the season and the grasses. But she actually formulated the feed for our chickens.
Hold on, one more thing on the yolk. It goes back to like necessary versus sufficient conditions. Don't evaluate the quality of the egg just on the yolk, because there are really big corporations out there that have been like, oh, consumers want orange yolks. I'm going to add marigold powder to the chicken feed. And these chickens live in cages in factories, but because they consume marigold in their feed, they produce bright orange yolks.
Yeah.
Are those the healthiest? No, but they make consumers happy. So just know your farmer, know what how they
Yeah.
raise their chickens, and yeah. Feed wise, we created our own feed. I knew I wanted to do this. This kind of like combines all of our passions, like science, health, and farming. I knew I wanted to do corn and soy free, and I wasn't happy with the options on the market, because the reason I thought someone wanted to do corn and soy free is to reduce the amount of PUFAs in the feed, because chickens are monogastric, so the amount of PUFAs in the meat and the eggs depends on the amount of PUFAs in their diet. So I was like, oh, people are doing corn and soy free because of that. No, people are doing corn and soy free just because that's like a label. And if you look at a lot of the corn and soy free options on the market, they just replace one PUFA with another. So they have a ton of fish meal, flaxseed meal, sunflower meal. And I was like, that's kind of pointless. So we made our own. That's a fun project that we're working on this year. So stay tuned for that development. But other than that, like our animals eat hay, because we have ruminants. So the lamb just have hay. So we buy some organic hay from a farm around here.
Well, it's because we have snow.
But we did get the fatty acid. We did get our eggs tested at a fatty acid lab at Michigan State University. And we were able to significantly reduce the PUFA content of our eggs. The results will be coming out in a journal in February or March.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, that's that really tickles my graduate student project. Fatty acid profile.
Yeah. So for four of our eggs, you get 1 gram of linoleic acid, which is the same as 1 conventional egg.
Ah, a big difference.
Yeah.
So Ray Pete would eat 8 of our eggs.
He would. He would.
Yeah. Yes, to get what, two tablespoons or whatever.
2 grams.
Yeah. Couldn't fungus replace soil destroying soy for livestock feed? Yeah, I guess so. The fungus thing, I'm actually interested in. There are some interesting projects. I went to graduate school with one person that was working in like pollution, really bad pollution remediation with fungal, engineering fungal inoculants that could break down plastics and things like that.
That's really cool stuff.
They eat, yeah.
And turn it into usable biomass again. I think that is personally where I would like to see fungal research going, not so much in the livestock feed and the human feed at this time.
No, the human feed. Well, yeah, I mean,
that is like, let's use human knowledge to mitigate the shit that we got ourselves into.
Yes, let's go fungus. Nick says Henlo from Dublin. Hey, what are you doing in Dublin? He's usually not in Dublin. If you had, let's say, several batches of cookies to bake and if that would be difficult to do.
okay.
Nature's Fund can grow in caves. Okay, is this the fungus? Yeah, fungus is, it's a very, for anybody that's interested in fungus as a food, there's a George R. R. Martin short story called In the something of the worm in the lair. It's about it's like a science fiction story where these people live on another planet and they were sent there, and then interplanetary travel went away, so they went back to like an almost medieval social structure, and they live in caves because the surface of the planet they're on is like not hospitable, and their sun is slowly dying, and they live entirely on fungus, and it's really interesting. And there's like worms that they have to like not get eaten by, and
This could be us, and this could be all of us, and like,
yeah, we got to watch out for that.
yeah.
Pop and orange is usually supplemented. Yes. Because I mean, you can put annatto dye on margarine and make it look like butter. So yeah,
It's true.
you really have to understand what's in the food, and anything can be made to look good. Like fake food looks better than real food. Like in like a picture, you know, like when like I'm saying, if you go to like a ramen shop in Japan, they have this specialty for making fake bowls that like it's like all like resins and stuff, and they can like glue them so that they're diagonal, like whereas real food would like fall out of the bowl to advertise, and it looks like it looks better than any real bowl, but it's not food. So you know, people need to understand like the difference between hyper reality and reality. Oh, in the House of the Worm. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah. In the House of the Worm.
It's a good short story for anybody that's Somebody asked, what does double yolk mean?
So double yolk is supposed to be super rare, but I think that it occurs a lot more in colder temperatures. This is weird, but there's like parallels between like chickens laying eggs and like female hormone production. So
It's not weird at all.
Chickens, they experience more stress in the winter. It's cold. No. There's less sunlight, so they produce less eggs.
Yeah.
Female hormones, like their period's going to get shut off in severe stress times. Like there's parallels. But apparently the rate of double yolk happens more in colder temperatures because their body doesn't stimulate the egg going through them, and so it holds on to two of the yolks. That's from my understanding, that it's kind of like a stress response.
They're good luck.
They are good luck.
Yeah, I've had some, and I've always enjoyed them.
And double yolk is only 0.5 PUFA.
What? No, it would be double.
No, but it's double yolk, so it's okay with our. I'm just kidding. Okay. 4 is 1. Okay.
I think that's all the questions. So, first of all, before I close this out, thanks a lot for coming on my channel, and for
This was a really fun conversation. I don't think we've ever had a conversation like this. Yeah. It was fun.
Yeah. If you want to, regroup and in some amount of time, really think deeply about all these issues, and maybe we could like deny the climate a little bit and talk about real environmentalism and real, things like that. Always welcome. Thanks, Sarah, for staying up past your bedtime. Oh, wait. One late question.
We have our blue light blockers.
Hello from Nebraska. Do the Strong Sisters know any great regenerative farmers in Nebraska?
Go to eatwild.com. I'm not familiar with anyone in Nebraska.
It's probably a lot, though.
Yeah, there's so much rangeland there. Yeah. Eatwild.com. Check it out.
All right. Do you girls have any closing statements?
No, thanks for having us on.
Yeah, I think if people are watching this as like a replay and they have further questions about like what we were getting into about like cycle of life, I think really ask those, because I think it sounds like all three of us are really interested in that question, and I want to try to better understand how people view that, if that makes sense. So ask those questions, and hopefully we can have another conversation about it.
All right.
But yeah, follow our farm journey on Instagram. We're at angel__acres. So it's 2 underscores because the others were taken. And so we share our like farming stuff on there, and then our strong.sistas account is like health.
Our farm name, Angel Acres, came because on YouTube, we used to sign off our videos. She would say, behave like an angel. So all three of us together, ready?
That's going to be hard to sync. We could try.
So
Okay.
that came from. Do you remember when people would have like flip phones? You would have like signatures, so you could attach a signature to each text.
Yeah.
So you would send like,
I hated
"Hey
that.
Mom, Kyle Mimosa."
Yeah.
Like you could have a signature for each text. And my signature was like squiggly, behave like a angel, squiggly, because we.
Angel.
Yeah.
That's good.
What was yours?
Mine was squiggly, stay bad, he above you, squiggly.
So it came from there, and then it also just became like
Nobody asked.
living, like I don't know.
I asked this question for.
I asked this. I'm answering a question that no one asked.
Right.
It's
like the best kind.
Being a better person. It's now about like being a better person. But that's all.
Good.
Yeah.
All right, great. Well, thanks again. And I believe that this talk is going to inspire a lot of people to be better people, and to if you want to engage in food production and environmental remediation and all kinds of good things, there are some strategies here. Patronize this type of agriculture and volunteer for this type of agriculture, and figure out if it's something that could be for you.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so that'll be it for the stream. Ending. Toodaloo. And we're out.